Chains rattled against the rust-red sand of Tarian 5. Under the searing twin suns, the human, Elias, knelt, his skin cracked and blistered, his breath shallow. Above him loomed his captors, cold-eyed reptilian merchants who traded flesh for metal. Just as the auctioneer raised his staff to seal the deal, a voice cut through the chaos, soft, melodic, yet commanding enough to silence the crowd. A figure stepped from a sleek obsidian vessel, silver robes fluttering in the wind. Her eyes shimmered like dying stars. "I'll buy him," she said. The alien widow's beauty wasn't of this galaxy, and neither, Elias sensed, was her mercy. The auction yard on Tarian 5 reeked of burnt ozone and despair. Metal scaffolds stretched high, hung with chains that clinked softly in the dry wind. Beneath them stood the condemned, slaves captured from dying worlds, traded like livestock for credits and weapons. Elias was one of them, a human bare-chested, ribs showing through his sun-scorched skin. Every breath stung his lungs with dust. His wrists bled from iron cuffs, each movement scraping raw flesh against corroded metal. Around him, alien buyers murmured in their guttural tongues, calculating the price of his body. He barely remembered how long he'd been there. Days, weeks? The suns never set on Tarian 5. One burned orange, while the other hung pale white, turning the horizon into an endless fever dream. Sleep was a rumor, water a luxury, and hope an extinct concept. The auctioneer, a towering reptilian with armor fused into his scales, stepped forward, raising his electrified staff. "Lot 382, he roared, his voice crackling through the speakers. Last of the Terrans. Strong lungs, decent musculature. A collector's piece. The crowd laughed, a cruel metallic sound that made Elias's stomach twist. He stared at the ground, jaw clenched, every instinct telling him to survive, even if it meant enduring humiliation. He had seen what happened to those who resisted. The staff hummed as the auctioneer prepared to close the sale. But then, a voice cut through the noise like silk slicing steel. "I'll buy him." The words were soft, feminine, but they carried through the yard with unyielding authority. The crowd fell silent. Even the auctioneer hesitated, his eyes narrowing. The figure that emerged from the shadows made time itself seem to pause. She was tall, statuesque, her silver-blue robes flowing like liquid starlight. Her hair shimmered with faint luminescence, cascading over her shoulders in soft waves that caught the sun like strands of molten glass. But it was her eyes that silenced the market, two orbs of translucent violet, alive with impossible depth, as if entire galaxies swam within them. Lady Seraphine of House Vale, the widow of the outer courts. Her name spread through the crowd in whispers, the same whispers that told of her husbands, all-powerful, all dead. Some said she consumed their life force. Others claimed she cursed those who loved her. Whatever the truth, no one dared cross her. The auctioneer bowed deeply, lowering his staff. "Lady Vale," he said, voice trembling, "it is an honor. The human is damaged. I can offer—" Her gaze silenced him. "I'll pay triple the asking price, triple." The crowd gasped. Even the guards exchanged glances. What could she possibly want with a dying human? Seraphine stepped forward until she stood before Elias. The world blurred around her presence, like reality itself bent to make room for her. She tilted her head, studying him as though inspecting a relic from a forgotten age. "Look at me," she said softly. Elias hesitated, then lifted his gaze. For the first time in months, he met someone's eyes without fear. Her expression wasn't cruel. It wasn't pity either. It was something else, recognition. "You're mine now," she said. But there was no threat in her tone. It sounded almost regretful. The deal was made in moments. The chains around Elias's wrists disengaged with a hiss. The crowd dispersed as quickly as they had gathered. No one wanted to linger near the widow's shadow. Seraphine turned and walked toward her ship, a sleek vessel unlike any Elias had ever seen. Its hull was black glass, carved with moving constellations that pulsed faintly as if alive. He followed her in silence, every step heavy with disbelief. The ramp retracted behind them, sealing the chaos of the market outside. Inside, the air was cool, fragrant with something faintly floral, like rain on fresh soil. He hadn't smelled anything so clean in years. She gestured to a reclining chair embedded in the floor. "Sit," he obeyed. Instinct, exhaustion, or both. From a crystalline basin nearby, Seraphine drew a vial of liquid light and poured it over his wounds. The substance glowed as it touched his skin, knitting torn flesh and cooling the burns. Elias winced, then gasped. The pain was gone. Not dulled, gone. "You're healing me," he whispered. "Only the body," she said. "The mind is another matter." Elias studied her movements. There was elegance in every gesture, but also weight, as if her grace was something she carried rather than possessed. "Why me?" he asked finally. "Why save me?" Seraphine stopped mid-motion. For a moment her face softened, and he saw the sadness beneath her composure. "Because you remind me of him, Elias echoed. She looked away, her fingers brushing the edge of a control panel. The ship hummed to life, engines purring like a heartbeat. "A ghost," she said simply. As the vessel lifted off, the world below became a swirl of rust and dust. Elias watched from the viewport, seeing the auction yard shrink until it was nothing more than a scar on the landscape. His chest tightened, not from sorrow, but from disbelief that he'd survived it. Seraphine moved to the command seat, her eyes fixed on the void ahead. "You'll rest in the passenger quarters. Eat, sleep, heal. Speak only when I speak to you." It sounded like an order, but Elias caught the tremor in her voice. She wasn't used to company. Hours passed in silence, broken only by the hum of engines and the soft chime of navigation beacons. Elias sat in his quarters, wrapped in clean fabric that smelled faintly of her perfume. He stared at his reflection in the mirror, thin, bruised, but alive. He touched the healed scars on his wrists, still half expecting them to reopen. There was something almost dreamlike about it all. The air was too pure, the lights too soft. Even the stars outside seemed different, closer, sharper. A door slid open behind him. He turned to see her standing there, no longer in her ceremonial robes, but in something simpler, a black silken gown that made her seem almost human. "You're not sleeping," she said. "I'm not used to comfort." She smiled faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Neither am I." She walked past him, tracing her fingers along the cold surface of the table. "Your people once looked to the stars and dreamed of freedom," she said quietly. "Now they are sold beneath them. You talk like you've known us." "I have," she replied. "I married one." Elias froze. She turned her gaze to him, and for the first time he saw pain crack through her beauty. He was human. A traveler from your world, one of the first to leave your atmosphere. He spoke of Earth as though it were heaven, oceans that breathed, forests that sang. He taught me what it meant to love. Elias's breath caught. What happened to him? Her lips trembled, and for a heartbeat, the widow of 1,000 worlds looked utterly fragile. He died searching for a way back. A silence settled between them, thick, electric, unspoken. Elias didn't know what to say. He wanted to ask why she'd saved him if every reminder of humanity caused her pain, but her expression warned him not to. She turned to leave, but paused at the doorway. "Rest, Elias. Tomorrow you'll see what remains of the stars he once loved. As the door closed, the lights dimmed to a faint blue glow. Elias lay back, staring at the ceiling. His mind replayed her voice, her eyes, the strange tenderness in her touch. Something told him he wasn't rescued. He was chosen, and somewhere deep in the silence of space, he began to wonder what price would come with her mercy. The days that followed aboard Seraphine's ship were drenched in silence, an elegant, heavy silence that seemed alive, breathing through the metallic corridors like a ghost of things unsaid. Elias awoke each morning unsure if he was still a prisoner or something else entirely. The walls around him were etched with alien runes that glowed faintly, reacting to his presence as if curious about the human anomaly walking among them. The air tasted clean but unfamiliar, tinged with a sweet mineral scent, like rainwater dripping over crystal. He rarely saw Seraphine. When he did, she seemed to drift rather than walk, her gown whispering across the polished floors. She ate alone, spoke little, and carried a grief that filled every corner of the ship more completely than sound ever could. One evening, as the vessel glided through a silent stretch of black space, Elias followed faint music down a long corridor. The melody was haunting, string-like, but unlike any instrument he knew. It pulsed, resonant and ancient, echoing off the metallic walls. He found the source in a vast chamber lit by dim blue spheres, floating in the air like stars suspended mid-breath. Seraphine stood in the center, gazing at a hologram that shimmered before her, a man's face, human, smiling faintly as he held a fragment of earth's soil between his fingers. "He said it smelled like home," she murmured without turning around. Elias froze. "Who is he?" "My husband," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Once he was like you, lost, curious, reckless. He came from your planet centuries ago, before the wars burned it." Her eyes glimmered as she turned to face him, the holographic light tracing her high cheekbones and silver hair. "He taught me about your kind, your hunger for meaning, your cruelty, your tenderness. He said humans love what destroys them, because they hope to understand it." Elias looked at the hologram again. The man's eyes were bright, almost alive. "What happened to him?" "He died," she said simply, "searching for a way back to your world. He believed there was something sacred in it, a soul that even the stars could not match." She touched the hologram's cheek, and for a moment the projection flickered. "He promised to take me there." "But the universe doesn't honor promises." Elias stepped closer. "You saved me because of him." Her gaze flicked to him sharply, like light striking glass. "I saved you because you reminded me what it felt like when he was alive." The words cut through the air, fragile and honest. He didn't know what to say. Part of him felt anger at being a shadow of someone else. Another part felt something else entirely, a strange sympathy for the alien widow who carried centuries of sorrow in her eyes. She turned away again, adjusting the controls. "Do you want to see what he loved so much?" The chamber walls shifted, panels retracting to reveal massive observation windows. Beyond them stretched a sea of colors, nebulae of violet and gold, swirling like smoke in water. But at the center of it all floated something small, fragile, and heartbreakingly familiar. A piece of earth. It looked like an island suspended in space, encased in a transparent energy field. A few trees, a patch of ocean, soil still breathing life under a dome of light. Elias's heart raced. "That's impossible." "Earth's gone." "It isn't gone," she interrupted. "It's fractured. The wars shattered your planet. My husband collected this fragment, a piece of memory, preserved before your species destroyed itself." He pressed a hand against the glass. It was warm, almost alive. "He saved it?" She nodded slowly. He believed that as long as something of earth remained, so would hope. Elias turned to her. And you? Her eyes glowed softly, unreadable. I envied it. Your world was chaotic yet beautiful. You felt everything so deeply. Even your destruction had poetry in it. She sighed, almost wistfully. My kind doesn't understand that. We live long, but without meaning. He gave me that, and then he left me with eternity to remember. The silence that followed was filled with the hum of the engines and the faint tremor of her grief. Later, when he returned to his quarters, Elias couldn't sleep. He wandered again, drawn by something unseen, until he found another room, small, almost hidden. Inside were shelves lined with human relics, vinyl records, faded photographs, worn-out books. He lifted one, a collection of poems by a man named Neruda. The pages smelled of dust and sunlight. "You shouldn't be in here," Seraphine's voice startled him. She stood at the doorway, her expression unreadable, though her tone held no anger. "I'm sorry," he said, lowering the book. I haven't seen these things in years." She stepped inside, her gaze tracing the artifacts like old friends. He kept them with him always. He said they reminded him of the Earth's music. Elias smiled faintly. "You mean humanity's chaos?" "Same thing," she said softly, and for the first time her lips curved in a small, genuine smile. He looked around. "It must hurt to keep this room." "It does," she admitted, "but pain is the last proof that something mattered." They stood in silence, surrounded by echoes of another life. Elias could feel her loneliness, vast and suffocating, like the vacuum outside their ship. He wondered how long she'd been drifting, carrying the weight of her husband's memory like a curse. Finally he asked, "Do you still love him?" Her eyes shimmered with violet fire. "Love doesn't die," she said. "It only changes shape." Elias nodded slowly, unsure whether he understood. He reached for the old record player on the shelf. It was an antique, yet it hummed to life as soon as he touched it. Soft crackling filled the air, followed by the faint sound of a piano. The music was human, gentle, melancholy, full of longing. Seraphine closed her eyes. "He used to play this when he couldn't sleep." Elias watched her, noticing how the rhythm of her breathing synced with the melody. There was something heartbreakingly human about her in that moment, the way she swayed slightly, lost in memory. "I don't know who I'm supposed to be here," Elias confessed quietly. "A reminder? A replacement?" Her eyes opened slowly, glistening under the dim light. "You're neither," she said. "You're a chance to remember what it means to feel. Before I forget entirely." Before he could respond, the ship shuddered. Lights flickered. A low alarm began to pulse through the corridors. Seraphine's expression hardened instantly, the warmth draining from her face. "They found us." "Who?" "My people," she said bitterly. "The high houses. They don't forgive disobedience." Elias's pulse quickened. "Because you saved me." "Because I dared to care for something beneath them," she said, her voice sharp with defiance. "They call it weakness." She turned to the console, her fingers dancing across glowing symbols. "We're entering a storm field. Stay here. If they breach the ship, hide." "Seraphine, do as I say." Her tone left no room for argument. Yet as she moved past him, he caught a glimpse of her hand trembling. In that instant, Elias understood. She wasn't afraid of dying. She was afraid of remembering what it felt like to lose someone again. The lights dimmed, and the hum of the ship deepened into a growl. Outside, lightning rippled across the black expanse of space, illuminating her silhouette in stark flashes of white and violet. She looked back once, her voice barely audible over the storm. "You said humans love what destroys them," she murmured. "Perhaps I finally understand why." And then she was gone, into the fire and the darkness beyond, leaving Elias standing in the relics of her broken heart, as the universe itself began to shake. The first explosion tore through the silence like a scream. Alarms wailed, and red light bathed the corridors of Seraphine's ship in a pulsing glow that made everything look alive, breathing, panicking, bleeding. Elias stumbled out of his quarters, still half dazed, the metallic scent of ozone thick in the air. The ship shuddered beneath his feet as another blast rocked the hull. "Seraphine!" he shouted, his voice swallowed by the roar of the engines. He ran down the narrow passageways, past flickering panels and sparking conduits, until he reached the command deck. She was there, standing tall in front of the navigation array, her eyes blazing silver, her hands moving through holographic controls faster than human sight could follow. "Get back to your quarters," she ordered, her tone sharp, urgent. "Not a chance." Elias grabbed the side rail to steady himself as another explosion rattled the deck. "What's happening?" Her jaw tightened. "Raiders, my kind. They've tracked us through the storm fields." He glanced out the viewing window, through streaks of plasma and lightning. Massive ships cut across the darkness, sleek and cruel, shaped like predatory wings. "Why are they attacking?" "You said they don't interfere with—" "They're not here for me," she interrupted. Her voice lowered, bitter. "They want you. A human in their hands would be proof of my betrayal." Elias felt the floor tilt beneath him as the ship dove. Gravity screamed against his bones. "Then give them what they want," he said between clenched teeth. "You can still get out of this alive." Seraphine's head snapped toward him, her expression unreadable. "Alive?" she repeated. "Elias, you think I've been alive since he died?" Her words hit harder than the shockwave that followed. A monitor exploded beside them, showering sparks across her face. She didn't flinch. "Strap in," she commanded. "If I'm going to die, I'm not doing it quietly." Elias obeyed, securing himself into a seat as the ship roared forward into the storm. Outside, the lightning storms of Tarion's upper atmosphere raged, a wild cosmic sea of blue fire and magnetic waves. The raiders followed in formation, firing beams of red light that cut through the clouds like divine wrath. Seraphine pressed her palms against the console, her eyes glowing brighter until energy began to arc between her fingers. The ship responded, panels shifted, engines screamed higher, and the weapon systems activated with a hum that made the air vibrate. "You'll see now," she said quietly, "why they fear me more than they hate me." Bolts of light erupted from the ship's wings, slicing through space like spears. The first raider exploded, then another swallowed by fire. The shock waves painted the storm in violent hues of orange and white. But for every ship destroyed, 3 more appeared from hyperspace, closing in like vultures circling blood. Elias struggled against the straps, adrenaline coursing through him. "You can't fight them all." "I don't intend to." She turned toward him, her expression calm, terrifyingly calm. "I just need to buy you time." "What does that mean?" She tossed something to him, a compact plasma rifle humming with faint blue light. "You'll need this. I don't even know how to use it." He protested. "Point and feel," she said, eyes flicking toward the viewport. Humans have always been good at that. A blinding flash tore across the deck as an enemy ship rammed into their hull. Metal screamed. Systems flickered. Gravity failed for a moment, sending everything into slow, drifting chaos. Elias floated for half a heartbeat before slamming hard into the control console. Pain shot up his arm. He looked up and saw the fear he never thought he'd see in her eyes. "They've boarded," Seraphine whispered. The sound came next, a hiss as the docking clamps sealed. followed by the rhythmic thuds of armored boots echoing through the ship's hallways. She reached out, touched Elias's cheek, gentle, fleeting. "If they reach this room, don't let them take you alive." He grabbed her wrist. "You can't ask me to—" "I'm not asking," she said, voice breaking for the first time. "I'm begging." The door burst open. Dark figures stormed in, their armor glinting like obsidian glass, their eyes hidden behind mirrored visors. Elias fired instinctively. The plasma bolt hit one square in the chest, sending the alien sprawling back. Another fired, and Seraphine moved like a flash of lightning, raising her hand to deflect the blast. The energy ricocheted, vaporizing the attacker instantly. Elias blinked through the smoke. "What are you?" "Something that loved too deeply," she said, unleashing another burst of light that cut through 3 more raiders at once. The fight was chaos, pure, raw chaos. The deck tilted as fire spread across the walls. Sparks fell like dying stars. Elias felt heat scorch his shoulder, the rifle vibrating with every shot. He wasn't sure how many enemies there were, only that Seraphine's power was burning brighter and brighter, her body glowing from within, veins of white fire tracing her skin. "Seraphine!" he shouted over the noise. "Stop! You'll kill yourself!" Her lips curved into a smile, soft, sorrowful. "You're wrong, Elias. I'm already dead." Her body pulsed with blinding radiance, and a shockwave of pure energy blasted through the ship, vaporizing the remaining raiders and ripping through the storm outside. Elias shielded his face as the brilliance consumed everything. The sound vanished. Only light remained, endless and merciless. When the light faded, the ship was silent. The alarms had stopped. The air was filled with drifting embers and the faint hiss of ruptured vents. Seraphine collapsed to her knees, smoke rising from her skin. The glow in her eyes flickered, dimmed. Elias crawled to her, ignoring the burns on his arms. "You're hurt," he said, voice shaking. "You need to rest." She smiled weakly, her hand trembling as it touched his chest. "No, I need to tell you something." He shook his head. "Save it. We'll fix the ship. There's no time." Her voice was barely audible now, each word cracking like glass under pressure. "There's something you must know." "About why I saved you?" Elias leaned closer. "Tell me." Her eyes softened, her pupils expanding until they looked almost human. "You think I saved you because you reminded me of him," she whispered. "But that's not true." "Then why?" "Because you are him." Elias froze, staring into her fading light. "What?" "You were created from him," she said, her words dissolving into breath. "A clone, the last echo of the only man I ever loved." He felt the world tilt again, this time not from impact, but from realization. The memories, the familiarity he couldn't explain, the strange way she'd looked at him, the sense that their souls had already met, it all crashed into him at once. Seraphine's fingers slipped from his chest. "He wanted to live again," she said faintly. "I made it possible. I thought I could handle it, but I was wrong. Every time I looked at you, I saw him. I saw love, and I saw everything I lost." The deck beneath them groaned as the ship's systems failed completely. Fire spread along the walls, licking at the edges of the consoles. "Seraphine!" Elias shouted, pulling her into his arms. "Stay with me!" She smiled through tears of light. "He loved your world so much. The smell of rain, the taste of wind, the music of chaos. I wanted to give it back to him, to you." The ship trembled violently. "We have to go," Elias said, dragging her toward the emergency pod. "We can still make it," but she stopped, her strength already fading. "Not we. Just you. Don't do this." Her hand brushed his cheek again, the warmth fading fast. "Promise me something," she whispered. "Anything. Remember what it felt like to love." That's the only thing that makes us more than ghosts." Before he could protest, she pressed her palm against the control pad. The escape pod sealed shut, locking him inside. "No! Seraphine!" he screamed, slamming his fists against the glass. Through the smoke, he saw her standing on the burning deck, the ship's light dying around her. For a brief moment her eyes met his, calm and infinite. Then she smiled, the same smile from the hologram of her husband. A final explosion engulfed her as the pod ejected into the void, spinning away from the wreckage. Elias's cries were swallowed by silence as the stars blurred into streaks of light. And in that silence, one thought pulsed through his mind like a heartbeat. He wasn't saved from slavery. He had been delivered from the past by the woman who couldn't stop loving it. The escape pod drifted silently through the void, spinning slowly amid the aftermath of the storm. Elias sat motionless, chest heaving, the hum of emergency systems the only sound left in existence. The window before him showed nothing but endless black, streaked with faint ribbons of fire from Seraphine's destroyed ship. He watched as the last fragments of her vessel burned out against the darkness, brief, bright, and gone. A part of him wanted to scream until his lungs tore apart, but the sound that escaped was smaller. A whisper, a name, Seraphine. The pod's console flickered, pulling him from grief into survival. Warnings scrolled across the screen in alien symbols, half broken, half decipherable. Atmosphere detected. Gravity pull inbound. The pod was caught in the orbit of a blue-green planet that glowed softly in the distance, too familiar to be real. Elias blinked hard. He thought at first his mind was playing tricks, showing him what he wanted most. But as the planet filled the window, there was no denying it. Earth, or what was left of it. The oceans shimmered like liquid glass, the continents scarred and rearranged by centuries of war. Massive rings of debris circled the planet, metal corpses of long-dead satellites and broken ships. Still beneath the ruin, there was color, green, blue, life. The pod's engines ignited automatically, dragging him through the upper atmosphere. Fire roared outside the hull, painting the world in orange streaks. Elias braced himself as the pod plunged through the clouds, shaking violently until, with a bone-cracking jolt, it slammed into the ground. Silence followed. Then the hiss of the hatch unlocking. He pushed it open and stumbled out into a world that smelled of salt and soil and rain. The sky was golden, the horizon endless. Waves lapped against the shore a few meters away, and the wind carried the scent of blooming flowers. Elias dropped to his knees, his hands sinking into cool sand. For the first time in years, he felt the ground breathe beneath him. He laughed, the sound breaking halfway into tears. Then he saw her. Seraphine lay a few feet away, half buried in the sand. Her skin was pale as moonlight, her silver hair tangled around her face. She wasn't moving. Elias crawled to her, his heart pounding in disbelief. "No, no, no," he muttered, his voice cracking as he lifted her gently. Her body was warm but fading, the light that had once pulsed beneath her skin, now dim and still. Her lips were curved into the faintest smile, like she'd fallen asleep mid-dream. He pressed his forehead to hers. "You said you wouldn't come." "You lied." Something glimmered between her hands. A sphere, small, smooth, pulsing faintly, with a heartbeat of light. It hummed softly, the sound delicate and alive. Elias reached out and touched it. The moment his fingers met its surface, the world disappeared. Light flooded his vision, and he wasn't on the beach anymore. He stood in a field beneath a sky of silver clouds, where the air shimmered with particles of memory. And there she was, Seraphine, alive, radiant, her gown fluttering like starlight in the wind. "This isn't real," Elias whispered. "No," she said gently, her voice echoing through the light. "It's what remains." He turned, realizing the field was filled with fragments, glimpses of lives, moments, echoes of laughter. The hologram of her husband flickered nearby, bending to touch the soil. The smell of earth filled the air. "You needed to know," she continued, stepping closer. "You were not rescued. You were brought home." "Home," she smiled sadly. "You were his legacy, Elias, a seed of his soul. When he died, I couldn't accept it. I took what was left, his DNA, his memories, his voice, and gave it life again." Elias's mind reeled. "You made me." "I made him," she said softly. "And you were the only part that came back pure." He took a step back. "So I'm not real." Her eyes shimmered with sorrow. "You are more real than anything I have left. You carry his curiosity, his fire, his love for Earth. Everything he was lives through you." Elias's chest tightened. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I was selfish," she said. "I wanted to believe I could love him again, that I could bring him back through you. But you weren't him. You were yourself. And I didn't see it until it was too late." The wind shifted, carrying the faint sound of waves, the same sound from the beach outside the vision. Seraphine looked at him one last time, her expression softening. "Now you must finish what he started. Live for Elias, live for the world he loved. Not as a ghost of the past, but as something new." The light around her began to fade. Panic surged through him. "Wait! Don't go!" She reached out, her fingers brushing his cheek like a whisper. "Everything I ever felt for him, I feel for you too. Not because you are him, but because you became what he couldn't. He wanted to speak, but the words wouldn't come." Her form dissolved into particles of light that rose into the sky, merging with the clouds until she was gone. Elias collapsed to his knees as the field around him shattered. The vision broke apart like glass, and he was back on the beach, the sphere still glowing faintly in his hands. He held it close, feeling its warmth against his chest, the last echo of her heart fading inside it. He sat there for a long time, watching the sun rise over the ruins of the world. The light turned the waves gold, the sky soft pink. Every sound, the wind, the water, the rustle of distant trees, felt sacred. After what felt like hours, he stood. The pod was smoking, useless now, but nearby, half buried in the sand, he found one of Seraphine's small devices, an energy cell still pulsing faintly. He connected it to the sphere, unsure why, only that it felt right. The sphere responded, glowing brighter until it projected an image in the air, a fragment of her voice. "I told you," it said, echoing softly through the breeze. "Love doesn't die. It only changes shape." Elias smiled through his tears. "Then I'll keep it alive," he whispered. "For both of us." He began walking inland, the sphere in his hand, lighting the path ahead. Every step brought him through traces of what Earth once was. Collapsed towers overtaken by moss, trees reclaiming cracked roads, rivers cutting through cities long turned to dust. But there was life here. Flowers pushing through concrete, birds singing in ruins. He found a settlement days later, small, hidden in the valley of what once might have been the Alps. Humans, real ones. Their eyes widened when they saw him, half-starved and covered in ash. But they took him in, fed him, listened to his story. When they asked where he came from, he hesitated, looking up at the stars that had nearly killed him. "From her," he said. "From someone who loved this world more than it deserved." They didn't understand. Maybe they didn't need to. That night, as the settlement lights flickered against the dark, Elias stood on a cliff overlooking the valley, the sphere resting in his hands. He watched the horizon, wondering if she could see him from wherever she was, among the stars or within the wind that brushed past his face. He pressed the sphere to his heart. "You saved me from slavery," he whispered, "but not the kind made of chains. You saved me from the kind made of forgetting." The sphere pulsed once, faint and warm as if answering him, and then it broke apart, scattering into countless motes of silver light that drifted upward, merging with the night sky. Elias didn't cry this time, he smiled, because somewhere in those stars she was finally free. And so was he. He turned toward the world waiting before him, reborn, scarred, imperfect, beautiful, and walked forward. Each step felt lighter than the last. The dawn rose behind him, gilding the earth in gold. For the first time, Elias didn't look back, because love had already followed him home.